One line. Do 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 do. This is PeaceBang's Rockin' New Year's Eve Day broadcast, and we screwed up earlier. I was not technologically aware enough to go live with the broadcast, so we had this fantastic hour-and-a-half conversation that is lost to posterity, I'm very sorry to say, with the wonderful Chris Walton offering lots of fascinating insights and many, many friends making terrific comments. But what can you do? We're all new to this, and we're here now, and you're here now, or you're watching us on YouTube later after the fact, and we're just going to hang out. We're going to hang out. And I first want to say how much I really can't stand that Dan Fogelberg song. It always reminds me of, like, I always want to hear the woman's version, you know, like, I met my boyfriend in a grocery store. He wouldn't shut up talking about old times, and how he obviously has a drinking problem, and she couldn't get away from him, and like, we drank a toast to innocence, and he wouldn't stop drinking. So anyway, that's I love making you giggle, honey. You're just so fun. So anyway, this is Victoria Weinstein. I've been writing and blogging and Facebook contacting you and connecting with you all for 10 years. So that's part of what we're celebrating today. And as I said, we had a whole broadcast earlier where we talked a lot about the early days of blogging and the changes that are coming, and I want to focus on that now. I have lost some of my earlier guests who went off to do other things, but I have Hafida Sophia, and I can never, and she's got a halo. She's rocking her halo. I see she figured out all of those great technological advances. And I've got the Reverend Lisa Bovey Kemper. She's holding her hand up. Why are you blocking the camera? What are you doing, you crazy woman?
Sorry.
And the Reverend James Estes, the librarian at Wellesley Seminary in Washington, D.C. So welcome back, or welcome. I want to talk to you all about social media and the new year, and how you are personally using social media to connect with community, either at work or personally, and what you see happening in 2015. What's changing? What's happening? What's coming? How are we all going to start using this technology in better ways, new ways? What have you learned? What do you want to let go and not do anymore?
Get some clothes on you.
And here's Cynthia Kane, the Reverend Lieutenant, everything weird and military that I never know how all those titles work, is calling in from Hawaii. Cynthia, I'm looking forward to hearing from all of us about how we are going to be using social media to connect in ministry or whatever in the new year. So take it away. Who wants to jump in?
I did. I'm running out of battery and also time, so if you don't mind, I just wanted to jump in. First of all, congratulations, Peace Bang. I am so honored to have gone to seminary with you way back when, before email, even the dark ages.
God, you're right. It was before email.
James Estes days, the place where James is most comfortable in his smoky appearance right now. So, and look at
we're all getting punchy is what's happening. Yeah.
Clearly, just in time for it to be recorded. So
I know, exactly. We were so well behaved. It was completely professional an hour and a half ago, wasn't it? Right.
Wasn't it when it wasn't being recorded?
Nora.
So one of the things I did want to comment when we were talking earlier about when you were talking about the use of hashtags, and especially about the I'm awful of trying to remember it. What was the one about the women and sexual violence?
Yes, all women was the hashtag.
Yes, all women. And one of the things that has been really relevant for me and interesting for me, kind of as a Luddite with all the technology going on, I keep up with Facebook. I kind of follow Twitter. I don't actually do Twitter myself. But
that's right, you don't, right.
In Snapchat, though, I have a Twitter account, but I'm not the sort to be able to respond, but that's mostly because of where I am right now. It doesn't mean that I don't follow it. It just means that I'm not in a place right now where I could just, say what I have to say. I have to be a little bit more cautious with what I say and how I say it when I say it.
She's a military chaplain, people, if you didn't know. Mm-hmm.
So while you are able to kind of have PeaceBang as a persona, and I have to be even cautious. I just started a blog, Captain Reverend Mother, and immediately, like, one of my military colleagues says, well, you're not a captain technically, and so that's why there's captain with an asterisk. Yeah. So
like cap'n, cap'n, or an asterisk. Or like an asterisk, or like quotation marks, or what? What are you doing? Yeah.
I just did an asterisk to explain why it's captain, because it was sort of like this, avatar that I created. It wasn't so much that I actually am calling myself a captain, but I'm writing about the interface between military, ministry, and motherhood. So that was kind of where the titles. Those are my 3 titles, and so anyway, that's aside. What I think is really interesting and relevant and cutting edge is what we're doing right now. This is the way, our congregations are getting older, and the way that we're able to do ministry, I know the way that I'm able to do ministry is following what's going on Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat, and just seeing things. So I get that information, and unlike what you're able to do with PeaceBang in the particular ministry that I have, I get this information and then I have to show up in person. So it's kind of this wonderful blending of the old and new school, where this generation thinks that the interactions are happening just solely, exclusively on social media, and then they let go, and then they're very surprised that someone actually shows up and then has that conversation about some of the things that have been going on. And it's been really relevant for me to actually show up in person. So when, well, here in within my unit. So when I hear, for example, this was kind of I'm debating whether or not to talk about it. There was an incident. Let's just say that there was an incident that I had heard, and it was basically rumor mill when it got onto the Facebook. And so instead of like just following up the rumors on Facebook, I actually showed up to where that particular service member and his spouse and then this other service member were, and I was able to get involved immediately in the immediacy. It's different than what you have, and those who are serving in the parish is you have a little bit more of a drive. I mean, I'm in with the people, so I see what they tweet, I see what they put on Facebook, and so within about 5 or 10 minutes, I can show up to where the event is actually happening, versus have to wait and do a 30-minute drive across Lynn or something like that. So so when I say I show up, it's showing up in the immediacy, but it's using social.
Uh-oh, what just happened?
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It actually depends on how we are all using social media, because for me, I call PeaceBang an independent online ministry of the Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, so it's very intentionally meant to be an outreach ministry, and my parish ministry is something that I, obviously I'm close enough to be aware of something, and which is why I love having a Facebook page, because I do get pastoral information on that Facebook page that I use for ministry, and boom, you can make a follow-up phone call or be with people personally very quickly. But of course, for a lot of us, the whole point of social media is that we are able to connect with people. In my case, it's, in a lot of different countries and time zones and in different faith traditions, and people with whom I'm very, very unlikely to ever have the opportunity to meet in real life, to meal in real life. So it's great that I think that is one way that clergy or community people can use social media to be almost like a walkie-talkie that you that you have constantly available in your mobile device. You can check in with this and then go, oh, somebody just tweeted something that concerns me, and I'm going to be able to follow up right away with that, which is great. So I'd like to know, like, Lisa, what are you thinking in terms of social media ministry? I mean, I would love to step back and look at 2014 for a moment for all of us and say, I mean, for me, social media connected me instantly with what I consider the big story of the year in religion, because it's about our national moral, mess, really, a moral problem in America, which is racism and violence. And so social media connected me right away with what happened in Ferguson and the aftermath. I followed it on Twitter initially, I think is when the story broke about Mike Brown, and then we were able to follow really in real time as people were tweeting the debate, which unfolded immediately, and I started following a lot of people who had a particular lens on the issue on the ground in St. Louis, and also African American activists and social justice activists all over the country who had a certain perspective. And I don't hesitate to be very specific about choosing what voices I want to listen to and follow. I don't feel like I'm obligated to seek out a conservative point of view or an alternate point of view. I can if I want to, but I find that there's a solidarity that we can have in social media community that has been really, really important for me, and so that's just that was a way that social media was really, really important for me this year, and will continue to be. But I just wanted to ask you all what you thought, and I yeah, I did get dropped. I'm really sorry about that. I got dropped, guys. Sorry. Did you have a nice time while I was away?
Confused.
Yeah, I just got sorry. My computer just crashed me out of here, so I don't know what happened.
It's fine. It's fine. It's
Just
good.
crashed. What did you? So what did I miss? You're talking about social media in the new year and what kind of ways you're creating community with social media and.
Yeah. Well, you were in the middle of a sentence, but
I usually am, honey. I
yeah.
usually am.
I use social media a lot, and I definitely felt this year was good in terms of seeing seeing people in my circle who are from very different backgrounds and all over the country, even all over the world, sort of getting information that would have been limited really in its in its range. And so I think I've mentioned this before, but it was a tough year news-wise, but I was um, emotionally, I felt more supported in some ways because I felt that because of things like Twitter and Facebook, but especially Twitter, that people I would have had to explain all this long information and story to and try to somehow convey news that I was receiving to the other people who are just outside of circles, whether it's outside of the Black community or outside of regional areas, specific regional areas, that they were able to access that, and not only were they able to access it, but they were able to access it without me really being involved, except maybe by sending a link, or maybe they were getting it from other people, and so they were able to do their own homework and research and their own thinking in their own time without the hand holding. And then it was like, oh, I saw so many people whose eyes, I think, were open to a reality that many of us have lived with for our entire lives, and then to see them make the decision to be supportive and to go into their own communities that are really not accessible to me, or that I really have no interest in accessing or have time to access, and share that information and have those discussions. It was it was, to me personally, it was very, very encouraging, and really kind of sometimes the only silver lining in a lot of these situations, because it's just, there can only be so many bridges. At some point you have to kind of get into different communities and have really, ongoing conversations, not just, have all these bridge people who are just trying to run back and forth and relay what's going on and how people are affected by, all these different political events.
That's such an interesting perspective that I really appreciate your sharing, because what you're saying is there's only a certain amount of kind of guiding people to certain resources and realities that you can do, and I hadn't thought about that on Twitter or wherever you are, Facebook or whatever, you can put something up and just let it be its own truth or fact or insight, and it's like you all have to deal with it. And I think that's actually really powerful, and you can't, again, none of us can rely on the response or control the outcome of how people react to it. But I hear Black folks talk a lot about the exhaustion and that sense of like, we don't want to keep having to be the tutors of what it's like to be African American in this country. You guys need to do your own work. So I think that's kind of what I'm hearing you say, that you get exhausted and demoralized, and that being able to use social media to say, get it, this is reality, here's another link, etc. Just read it, follow, look at this image, look at this video clip of these police officers taking this man down. If you don't think that that's criminal, then I don't really know what to say to you, which is something I know that as a white person, I felt that. Like, if you don't think that's just murdering a guy in the street for selling loose cigarettes, then I don't know what else to say. I can't walk across that bridge and come get you, or or whatever. We're just at different points. We have very different points of view here. So, yeah, interesting. Thank you. Yeah, Lisa, you look like you wanted to maybe chime in there. You've been doing a lot of social justice work and connecting with people on social media. So what do you see in 2015 as you continue your work with Moral Monday, or what you're doing down there in North Carolina? You're in the Bible Belt. You have been on the march for reproductive rights, for marriage equality, for all kinds of things. What's going on down there for you guys now?
Well, one of the things that I have found really challenging in the conversation about Ferguson and all of those, I am not from the South, and I don't have the experience of having lived in the South. I grew up in very white places, even though they were connected. They were. I was aware of things, but so the experience of race and race relations in the South is entirely different from anything that I have experienced, and I see that in a lot of the congregation, because so many of us are transplants, so many of us are highly educated, and we want to be good, right? And so what's challenging in many ways is figuring out how to be in our community. Moral Monday is not in our community. We went to Raleigh to do that, and that was really important. But
Lisa, how far away is Raleigh for you, by the way?
It's about 4 hours.
Oh, it's so much farther than I thought. Okay.
Yeah, so so we would go there and do that kind of activism, and the Moral Monday movement is the most integrated movement I've ever been a part of, personally. And then in Asheville, there's a whole, every southern town has its own race history, and you have to go find that information. You have to go ask what that information is, and it's our job to figure that out. It's not helpful if we go and say, tell us what you've been experiencing for so long. That's not good allyship. And so starting to have that conversation in the context of a congregation that wants to go do stuff and wants to go help people learn how to read or go help, which is all very good stuff to do. But if we're going to have integrity in the race work, we have to be doing our own work. And that's not the fun part. Fun is not the right word, but
no, I know.
That's not the part that feels good.
Right.
And so figuring out how to have that conversation, and I've used social media to some extent to do that. I was able to refer to a number of good columns, including yours about the intellectual condescension. That one was great. When I preached about this, I was able to then go back in our e-news and say, if you want to read these 3 things that I referred to, you can go here. But trying to integrate social media is sometimes an uphill battle. And what I find most powerful about it for me is that it gives me a place to go where I can have conversations with people who understand what I'm talking about and understand the things that I'm struggling with, and it makes me feel less isolated and it gives, the conversations give me a lot of inspiration and also support in terms of, this is hard and it's heartbreaking. And where are we and who are we to be part of the solution, as opposed to just putting our heads in the sand, which would be much easier. And
yeah, so you're actually agreeing with what Hafid is saying about it being supportive. I think that's a word that I feel very supported by the online community, really. And so it's like we take from, this in terms of a ministry dynamic with social media is we take a lot of support, inspiration, resources, a lot of resources from our social media connections, some of which are with people we know in real life and love in real life and, spend time with, some of whom we see once a year, and it's like it feeds us, and then we bring it to our parish or congregational ministry setting or our lay ministry or wherever. And I think that that's another reason I don't love the critiques of social media as being just, it's just stupid, you're just, making a photograph of your hamburger and your French fries and nobody cares. And some people are using social media that way. They're using social media to say, oh, my husband and kids, perfect kids, and I had this beautiful vacation in Disneyland. Well, a lot of people aren't using social media that way. So I always want to say, I'm sorry if that's all it seems like it is to you, but for many of us, it's so deep. It's a lot of other kinds of interactions, and it can be hard and painful. Sometimes what we share isn't pretty, it isn't idealized, it isn't shined up and presented for public consumption. It's actually where we are in the moment. It's raw, it's gritty, there are questions, we're sort of showing our insecurities or our failures as they're happening. That's another thing about social media, you get to fail in real time. And so I always want to push back to the critique of social media by saying it may be the way you're using it or the people you're using it with that are not feeding you in any way, and that doesn't need to be the case. So how are you going to use it in the future in 2015? And by the way, welcome to Scott McIsaac. Scott is on our call.
I'm holding my phone in my hand. I can't figure out how to get this on the computer.
Yeah, but you're online, and I see your face. It's great. You're not a pirate avatar anymore. And Scott is a Unitarian Universalist layperson. I'm going to reintroduce you. Who has I have known him for at least 10 years that I've been blogging. He started his own blog, The Socinian. Under the blog de Nom, or Nom de Blog of Fausto. He started his blog 1 month after PeaceBang was born, and so I want to welcome him to our Rockin' PeaceBang New Year's Eve Day broadcast and just say hi. And I should probably do another reintroduction. Lisa Kemper is a minister, Unitarian Universalist minister in North Carolina, and Hafida Sophia is a Unitarian Universalist layperson in Portland, Oregon, and a blogger who used to blog under the her blog was called "Never Say Never to Your Traveling Self," and it was a beautiful, poetic, mystical, lovely. Lot of writing that I remember finding back a long time ago and loving. James Estes, the Reverend James Estes, is a United Church of Christ minister, and he is the librarian at Wesley Seminary in Washington, D.C. He is working on his PhD. He's a medievalist, and he speaks lots of really weird old languages, and Icelandic too, I think. Right? No, you don't. You wish you did, though.
Yeah.
He likes to go to Iceland a lot for some reason. I mean, it sounds amazing. Not that I don't want to go, but it's just like you're always going. Let's go to Iceland again. So, and this is Lieutenant Commander Cynthia Kane, a Unitarian Universalist minister and chaplain, joining us from Hawaii. She's a very, very good friend, and she is also the mother of my godson. So that's
which is my most
special.
important. So, unfortunately, I am going to have.
Yeah.
I am going to have to leave, but I did want to follow up or answer or maybe perhaps
yeah,
start
you wanted to chime in, yes.
Of you were talking about like what could be the future of PeaceBang, and it seems like what we're doing right now can be an extension of the PeaceBang of the ministry of PeaceBang, which is this sort of the salon. I mean that is so who you as Victoria Weinstein are, but it's also who you. It's one of the essences of your ministry, and I just have this sort of image of, I don't know, fondue for two, if you know the reference from Glee, or or coffee talk, where you, Vicky, would invite somebody. I know The View is trying to do something along those lines, and Meg is definitely a personality, though you have.
She's speaking of Reverend Meg Riley, by the way. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, Meg Riley. That it could be sort of this extension of having these conversations, perhaps on a monthly basis or maybe weekly basis.
Yeah.
For like 30, and give us a topic and talk amongst ourselves, and then to continue this. That's one thought I had. The other is just sort of continuing the outreach. Is that you aren't necessarily the only face of Unitarian Universalism, but you definitely are one of the most public faces of Unitarian Universalism, and through the forums of PeaceBang and Beauty Tips for Ministers. And I could just see you doing this sort of online ministry to shut-ins. I was thinking, God, I wish you had done something. I was so sick. I had such horrible morning sickness on Christmas Eve, and I ended up not going to Christmas Eve service. And I wish that there had been a Christmas, a PeaceBang Christmas Eve service. Where I could have lit a candle with you. And I was just thinking, that's just me, Cynthia Kane, who knows about the importance of community and needs this for her own, self and her sustenance for her spirit. And just there's got to be a need for that. So I know that you have this independent online ministry, and I could see you branching out, or PeaceBang branching out in that way.
I think that I would love to, and I think my own congregation and I are talking about bringing worship to the larger world, Unitarian Universalist or not, just creating worship because we have the resources to do that. We're switching we're working on our own sanctuary. This is at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn. We're going to be putting in a screen. We have a really good sound system. We have a great music program. We have a very creative and talented staff. So that might be something that, PeaceBang and Victoria Weinstein Parish Minister might be melding a little bit in 2015. We're going to try some things and see, because maybe I can do some broadcasting out of my church, and it will be people might chime in because they know PeaceBang, but it depends. It's sort of what works to minister to people, and right. I do I kind of want to be the UU Oprah, and do more interviewing and creating salons and spaces for people to have conversations. I love it. I love I love learning the technology, even though I'm screwing up all the time.
Will you be giving away cars?
I will be giving away cars. You're sitting on one right now, Scott. If you look under your chair, there's not a ticket for a car. There's an actual car. And so, it's just to keep learning. And because I was, I mentioned to James earlier that he's so connected to the ancient technology of the book and manuscripts, and so am I. I love books, so I want to write a book really badly, but I have a feeling that what's more relevant maybe right now is just these ways of connecting that I understand. Hafida made a hilarious comment about how Facebook reminds many people of how horrible their family members are, which I think is how some people experience social media, as just this place where they can't quite figure out how to get comfortable. On the other hand, I just got a letter yesterday from a woman who said, "Thank you for your PeaceBang ministry, because I have not been able to find a Unitarian Universalist community that I really liked, that really sort of feels like I can go there." And I have a lot of folks that I connect to who say that. They say, maybe I'm not a joiner, maybe I'm not, maybe I haven't found a congregation that's a good fit, I don't know. But I'm learning a lot from reading you, and I love being able to comment and interact and have this kind of community online. So just trying to respond to the spirit. Yeah, it's hard. We're all trying to do that.
I do have to go. I send you love and love.
I love you.
78-degree day here. So.
Happy New Year. Da, 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 da. You got the little tag.
Actually, I started rewriting the song "Mame" for you of PeaceBang, and I'll send it to you at another time.
Da 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 da. PeaceBang.
Yep, that's exactly it. Love you all. Bye.
I can't wait to hear it. Bye, sweetie. Kisses, kisses. So who's next?
It's Scott. I'd like to jump in and comment on what you were just saying about online community being a potential future thing. I think there are an awful lot more UUs out there than there are members of UU congregations. And I think a lot of that has to do with how difficult it is to be in community with members of congregations who don't take their covenantal obligations to put the community ahead of the individual seriously. And I think the medium of electronic communication, especially audiovisual kind of stuff that you get on blogging or on Facebook or on Google Hangouts or whatever, forces you to put the community ahead of yourself. And then the community values bubble up to the top rather than the individual objections or dissents or whatever that often control the conversation in a live community. So people who may feel uncomfortable in a live congregation because they're always having internal little catfights or whatever, can find the kind of comfort and spiritual nurturing in an online community that they don't get in one of our congregations. And so I think it could be. I mean, nobody is trying to set out an agenda to do this, but I think that we see little hints of it being sort of a grassroots area for denominational growth. And if it were conceived of that way and guided that way, led that way, it might be an avenue that helps correct some of our, or address some of our concern about, is the denomination withering? Are we going to grow? Are we becoming irrelevant?
I think that one of the questions about connecting in what we call beyond congregations ministry, and Lisa may smile and recognize that sort of buzzword, or entrepreneurial ministries, which is really a way of saying churches can't afford ministers anymore, so you all better figure out new ways to raise money. That's, it's like the hip way to say that. And in beyond congregations ministry, this is exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. But the fact is that what everybody asks me who wants to start a social media kind of ministry is how do you get paid for it? And it's like the answer is I don't. You don't, because online, the whole revolution of the internet is that it's free. It's free access. You can get online right here and have community, have that conversation. So I think congregations are really interested in beyond congregations ministry, and yet they understand that it's not going to be lucrative. It's not going to be what is that word everybody uses? They say, what's that word? To make money. It's a fancy word for making money. Now, for me, I've always been extremely fortunate. I'm sorry?
Remunerative.
No, that's not the word. That is another word that means that. But the word, it's a more hip internet-based word. How can you?
Clickbait.
No. It's how can you monetize this? Vicky, how can you monetize this? And I've always been very fortunate. I've had a full-time parish ministry position that not only is it a salary and benefits, but it's also the community practice, the community engagement, the work of church that informs everything that I write, or it undergirds my life in such a way that it's just social media action and social media stuff is an outcome of that. It's part of it. And a lot of people are just thinking, well, I don't have any job. How can I become a famous online minister and get paid? I don't know that that's ever going to happen. I think that you have to either have another kind of paying position, or you have to write books or go on tour or be a consultant or something like that. But for those who might be watching thinking, wow, Victoria gets thousands of readers for one of her articles, it doesn't monetize. It doesn't turn into anything but a really great rich conversation, and hopefully spreads liberal religious values or perspective. But that to me is really valuable, but it does not add up to more people coming into our churches or anything. And I think that's where the UU larger community keeps hoping that. It's just like, I'm just going on about this, but it's just like when we used to do, or we still do, weddings for everybody and funerals for everybody, right, Lisa? I mean, you're a UU parish minister. And we used to say, oh, it'll bring people into the church. It doesn't bring people into the church hardly at all. I mean, the numbers just aren't there. For every 100 weddings that any of us do for non-members, I mean, we're happy to do it. It's a great connection with people, but it doesn't, for every 100 weddings you do, you might get a couple or two who end up coming to your church, right? I mean, so Lisa's nodding her head. Or if you do a funeral that's really wonderful and very special, a memorial service, people really appreciate it, and they think these Unitarian Universalists, these people are cool, or these liberal religious people, they're really cool, and I love what I experienced here. Do they start going to one of our churches or to a UCC church? They do not. So that's part of what's, challenging in our times as the traditional church dies out. I mean, the parish involvement, as Scott is talking about, where people get their hearts broken by trying to practice covenantal community, and they get disappointed, and they go away, or their schedules change. They can't do Sunday mornings anymore, and there's no other way for them to really integrate with the community anymore, because there's no significant programming any other time of the week. So that was a lot. What do you all have to say about that, or anything else? I think we'll go for another 15 minutes.
Emerson handled it by resigning his pulpit and leaving the lecture circuit and taking lecture fees.
He also had a wife who conveniently died and left him a little fortune.
Well, there's
Ellen Tucker died and left him enough money to survive, and so he didn't have to work in the parish ministry. So there's that. I mean, we look at Emerson and we say, oh, he had all this integrity. He quit his parish ministry position over his objection to celebrating communion on a weekly basis, and I'm like, yeah, he also didn't really like parish ministry very much.
I wonder if that wasn't just an excuse.
Yeah, I've always thought it was.
I think that he found that the things that he had to share were not things that were easily communicated in the medium of the pulpit, and he had to find another medium that worked, and he was much more successful in the medium that he found than the one that he had been trained for.
Which is something you just wrote to me about blogging, didn't you? You wrote me a little note yesterday, and you said, I think that blogging has allowed a lot of ministers to say things that wouldn't have been of interest to their congregations from the pulpit, which is true. It's an alternative space.
I think that's why there was such, at the time that PeaceBang began, there was such a, sudden little flurry of people migrating to blogs, and the blogs caught some attention because people were saying things that they hadn't been hearing in the pews.
Right.
So there was a new avenue of communication opening up. That's in some ways similar to the lecture circuit that Emerson found 150 years ago. Right.
Exactly. Well, yeah, go ahead.
And I think that's a really interesting point, because you will surely remember, as I just recalled, that when you started, PeaceBang and Victoria Weinstein were completely separate. And I think my perception, at least, was that the PeaceBang persona was able to say things that maybe Victoria couldn't say. And there got to, at some point you melded, you whatever that whole story was. But so now we know that PeaceBang and Victoria are the same, come from the same place. But I'm really interested in the conversation about what we can say from the pulpit, what we can't say from the pulpit, what we are willing to say on social media that we're not willing to say from the pulpit, and what that means in terms of where the ministerial authority is coming from, what the risk is on social media, and what the risk is in the pulpit, and how that's the same or different. It's a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I would love to address that, and I did talk about it a little bit yesterday, but the pulpit is a different space for ministry, and the pulpit to me is there's a relationship with the congregation. It's a conversation with the local congregation, and there's a ministry that I'm always considering. How will this minister to the people who are in these pews today, right now? And with social media, first of all, most of us began blogging anonymously, and that was just because that was just sort of the norm. You started your blog, and if you weren't blogging as so and so, the minister of such and such, like Scott Wells started his blog as Scott Wells blogging Universalist Christianity as Boy in the Bands. For those of us who weren't going to identify as doing blogging or social media as a way of ministering to our parish in a way, or representing our parish ministry, we blogged anonymously at first. Again, I just did it because Chris Walton was sort of anonymous, and other ministers blogging, there weren't that many, were anonymous. And then I was it was always an open secret, It's always like, if anybody wants to find out who I am, they can find out. But I was just really nervous at the start that I didn't seem in any way to be trying to represent the views of my congregation. That was why I blogged anonymously. And then our favorite UU stalker from Montreal threatened to out me, and I said this yesterday, and I was like, well, whatever. I didn't care about being found out so much as I just wanted those who were reading my blog not in any way to be like, oh, this is what her people at her church think. I just wanted to really separate the realms. And then eventually, and then when I started blogging as beauty tips for ministers, I was for sure, because I'd created such a broader persona for that blog, I for sure wanted to not bring Victoria Weinstein into it, because I didn't, again, want my congregation to feel yoked in any way with that work. And so I think now, because, I mean, again, I was one of the first that we were all brand new at this. Now I think congregations themselves, are more used to social media, but back when I started, it was just not used in the congregation for anything. Churches didn't have Facebook pages. They didn't have a Twitter feed. They didn't have any of that going on. They didn't have blogs for the church. So ministers who were engaging in social media really had to deal with the fact that they were stepping out into a new form of public conversation that their own congregations were not going to be part of, and carving a space for, like, who do I want to be online? And for me, it was just, I want to be able to write about things that I love writing about, culture, politics, without that filter of how will this minister to my congregation. It was just like, will this be an interesting perspective to anyone who cares to read it? And then, of course, readers started to connect. And I think the issue of authority is, especially when I started with beauty tips for ministers, and people would go, who are you to say? And it was like, you know who I am to say? My readers are reading and responding, so they're giving me the authority. So when you're a minister writing online, or when you're anybody with a blog, the way you get authority is to just, people read you and appreciate it, and they grant you the authority to be a writer and to be a public voice. And if they don't read you, if they're not interested, then you are not so much a public voice. You are someone who's writing because you may love writing, but that's something that's feeding your soul, like journaling. And if you have 3 readers, you still may love doing it, and that's okay. And plenty of people do, or just their close friends are reading. But if you're trying to have a public influence or start conversations that get other people joining in, you can only rely on the readers to come through and to say, yeah, I love this, I'm going to be part of it. And of course, being controversial is always a great way to get readers. And I've never intended to be controversial, never. In fact, it's so stressful to be controversial. Who wants that? But a lot of things I've written have had a lot of comments because they got people really riled up.
Yesterday, you only talked about one of your controversial blog posts. I thought you were intending to talk about 3 of them.
Well, I mentioned, so bad that you remember that. I talked about the fact that I wrote about loving the word the Lord, which was very upsetting. A lot of you use. I also wrote about covenant, which was very upsetting to use. And I actually don't remember the third. It was probably something I decided I wouldn't talk about, so I conveniently blocked it out. But I've had my times. I've had my times that I've put things out there and have been shocked to come back and see, whoa, boy, have I got people upset and riled up. And yesterday, Deborah Pope Lance said to me, thank you for having such thick skin. And I said, I don't really have thick skin. I just have really good friends and a deep prayer life and a sense of needing to speak about things I care about and just really wanting to, to put them out there and see what happens. Mostly I'm just trying to be honest and trying to work something out to understand it better, and it ends up being something that other people are also trying to understand. So that's, I know I upset members of a particular community once by blogging something. In fact, you were involved with that, Scott. And I went to General Assembly and accidentally sat down at a table full of those folks for breakfast, and they wouldn't speak to me.
I don't remember. Wow. I wasn't at that GA, so I don't remember.
No, you don't remember the GA, but you offline, I'll remind you of a conflict that we had, and you were weighing in a supportive way, as you always do, and I'll remind you. She's like, Hafita's like, awkward. Yeah, I just, you know what, to me, sometimes things are really funny and they're not funny to some other people who are super sincere and earnest. And that's always been part of my,
You had
strength or
another
weakness.
phrase that you sometimes applied instead of super sincere and earnest that was a little bit more salty.
I don't know. I don't even know. Maybe I don't want to know. Want to type it in the margins and we'll see.
It had to do with a pre-existing attitude.
Oh, the pre-offended?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's Rebecca Scott. That's her phrase. I love that phrase. And she calls certain people the pre-offended. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's part of our liberal community. I think James is in the United Church of Christ, and he works with the same liberal, crunchy, very sincere kind of folks. And that's our thing is, to what I say, listening for instead of listening to. You're listening for those certain things that offend you so that you could jump on them and say, you're oppressing me, as opposed to listening to what somebody is saying and just listening to them and receiving it and,
Yet,
saying, oh, that's interesting. Well, I totally disagree.
Yet the UCC church right next door to ours, they're still singing out of the Pilgrim hymn roll and they love it.
Sure, and that's who they are. As long as they all agree that they love it and they're not constantly bickering and fighting about, who's excluding whom and all of that. It just really, community is hard. And I think somebody said, would you still do this if you won the lottery? And it's, for me, I would do all of it. I would still try to hope to be in parish ministry, and I would still hope to do all the social media connecting that I love doing, because it's a fascinating conversation, and it's daily. It's not like a special thing that we save for once in a while. It's just this ongoing inspiration that I get. So I'm going to actually start to wrap this up. I really, really thank you all for coming back. I know we talked for over an hour, and we weren't broadcasting on YouTube. But I want to thank those of you who are watching this YouTube broadcast or who have been checking in live. I do not own any bow ties. That is the question that just came in to to the sidelines here. I want to encourage all of you to pursue creative and inspiring activity for yourself in the new year, and to do things that feed your soul and aren't necessarily goals that are about, tangible things that maybe are upsetting when you don't achieve them. Just let's make our goals realistic and life-giving in the new year, and love each other more. That's all I can say. I love all three of you, and I'm really grateful. And to you and all of the other guests that have come on today, that would be Chris Walton, and Ramona came on. I don't know her last name. And, oh gosh, who all was on here? Cynthia Kane, and I can't remember who else. Anyway, my memory is terrible, but my love is not, and I've just had a great, great time. Thanks so much again. And are there any last questions? I think James is asleep. My dog wants to go out, and he's patiently waiting. My dog, who has 1,228 Facebook friends himself. That's it, right? So you guys, what are you doing for New Year's Eve? Anything exciting? Shaka.
No. Not much. We're kind of keeping an eye on my daughter's party.
Oh, excellent. And James? Plans?
Finding an occasion to wear a bow tie.
You're going to do what and wear a bow tie?
Finding an occasion to wear a bow tie.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. And Hafida, what about you guys? Are you doing New Year's Eve?
It will happen, but I'm probably just gonna cook. So just
She's
cook,
like, it's coming. I don't know. Good, good, good. Oh, that wasn't a shaka, James. That was an I love you. Show me again. James is sign language. Is that it? I love you.
No, you need to do the other.
Okay. All right. I love you too.
I thought it was.
That's that. it's I'm like can't kind of get my little fingers down. But anyway, um, so little. I have like little baby hands. All right, you skids. I'll see you in real life sometime. I will see you this summer, madam. Sir, I will see you whenever, both of you, sirs. And so, everybody watching, goodbye, Happy New Year. And we'll check in with you soon. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.